Welcome back, everyone, to episode 4 of the Unfiltered Podcast. As always, I am your amazing and lovely host, Matthew Francis. Oh, shut up, Alex. And if you haven't heard, I am joined by the one and only person on the world like him, I guess, Mr. Alex Pierce. Alex, how's it going?
It is a going day. It's dark, it's gloomy, it's late, I'm tired, let's get this over with. Just kidding, I'm in a great mood.
That's actually surprising for you.
Alright?
Although it was a very dark and glooming day today. I thought it was going to rain all day, and it didn't. I was actually kind of surprised.
I know. My dad was like, it's gonna rain. I was like, I don't think so, but it's just gonna be cloudy.
I was outside for most of the day, and I mean the up until probably 1 or 2 o'clock it was doing good, and then out of nowhere it just got dark and it felt like it was gonna rain, and the wind came in and everything. So glad it hung out, but hopefully it can hang out for the rest of the week. And
welcome to September in central New York.
Yep, pretty much, where the sun sets at 7:30 and it gets kind of rainy and cold as soon as
all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. So, moving on, but today's episode is going to be a little bit different than our normal episodes. Our normal episodes, as you know, cover, I would say, anywhere between like 4 and 6 topics or ideas, stuff like that. We try to, vary our shows and our episodes. That way we can, we don't spend a full hour and almost a half on one topic. But today we're going to do what we call a mini episode, and what we're going to be doing maybe once a month, maybe once every couple months. It won't be a common thing, but it'll happen throughout. And today we're going to do our first mini episode. This episode will be a little bit shorter than the normal episodes, between 45 minutes and an hour, so hopefully you can stick around and hang out for that given time. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth. It's going to be about one topic and that topic only, instead of the normal, 4 to 6, even a couple more that we would cover on a normal episode. But it should be fun, and it should be engaging for you guys as well. And as always, we love to hear about your thoughts at the end of the episode, on Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you find the podcast. And I think we're going to kick right off today's mini episode, and we're going to be covering the 2020 presidential campaign, election, and pretty much everything revolving around that, from the Democratic and Republican conventions to up until November when we vote. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Alex here, because he is the history buff out of the two of us. And Alex, why don't you kick us off today?
Where do I begin? Well, as normal, it's typical convention time in an election year, and it's both sides saying a bunch of wonderful to-do stuff that was never going to happen, and also saying complete crap about the other side, which we saw in both conventions. And I was taken back by the Republican National Convention. The Republicans said that the Democrats were dark and gloomy and depressing. I watched the Republican National Convention and I wanted to cry. There was no energy. The only people that spoke were Republican legislators, the president, and some of the top Republican donors. The Democratic National Convention had regular people speaking, had celebrities speaking. So I don't know, you can't get much darker than having a bunch of politicians and bureaucrats talking the entire convention.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I saw clips. I didn't watch the convention. I didn't watch either of them. I saw clips of both. And I agree with you. I don't think there was a lot of personality, but I don't think there was either in the Democratic side. And
there wasn't much. There was a little, the first
time was watching the clips that I did, like I said, I didn't watch the whole thing, so I can't say front to beginning, whatnot. But the clips I saw, a lot of them were just kind of monotone. I mean, granted, the Republican side, they tend to speak their mind a little bit more, so it was kind of I guess, more upbeat and in your face. But the Democratic side, there was just kind of monotone. I almost fell asleep listening to the little minute and a half, 2 minute clips that I saw. Imagine a 4 or 5 day long event where you're watching speaker after speaker. I just couldn't. For me, it was just very monotone, and it didn't catch my eye.
See, that's how I felt about the Republican convention. See, with the Democratic convention, it was interesting because I knew that Joe Biden had lost his wife and his daughter years ago, like when he first was in the Senate in a car accident. Like to the extent of what happened, how it, what everything that happened, and it really humanized him in a way that the Republicans didn't do for Trump. And I can relate to losing someone, and so that made me emphasize with him on a new level. But there was some energy, like night two, his wife took over, and she was pretty funny. And Joe Biden said, "I'm Jill Biden's husband." Night three was the best. Kamala Harris showed a new side of her. Outside of the rough and tumble, in your face, willing to tell you how it is, she showed that she's, at the end of the day, mom, a human. And but with the Republicans, the best part of all 4 nights was Melania's speech.
I didn't
Melania,
see. That's the one thing I regret is I didn't watch Melania's speech. I haven't even seen clips of it, to be honest, and I think that's pretty sad. But then again, I haven't seen clips of really Biden's or Trump's speech either, so maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. But that's I heard it was, I wouldn't say great, but I heard it was good and decent, and people actually were kind of into it a little.
her speech alone bumped up Trump's poll numbers. Poll numbers always bump up a little bit after a convention. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean it's always been like that.
Yeah, but bump. So for the Democrats, I believe it was like a 12-point bump at the end of it. For the whole thing, in the of the Republican convention, I think it was like 3 points. But Melania's alone, I think that was like maybe 8, 9. I know it was much bigger than the general convention. So Melania's his key.
Yeah.
If he can get her to,
Well, and I
I think,
think on the obviously following every night of the convention and into the next morning, the news is and the press is always talking with both the if they're willing to the people that are running, but also the speakers and higher officials within the conventions and stuff. And I did see a clip of a um, interview. It was a short interview. It was only like a 5 minute interview on like it wasn't the Today Show, but one of those morning kind of talk shows with Kamala Harris, and her energy in that seemed different the day after her speech than it was at her speech. And I think looking and listening at it, I think she was more nervous after her speech than she was before. And that's just the way that I perceived it. Maybe I'm wrong or maybe I'm looking at it different. But at the speech, she was kind of more open, I would say. Whereas day after, she seemed more, I wouldn't say laid back, but kind of,
started.
yeah, like self contained, didn't really want to open up a lot, etc.
Well, and I can understand that on a level. It's easy to speak. National convention, there were only a few people there, and they were camera people because everything of COVID. When you're doing an interview, it's much harder than doing a speech
I
because
would agree and disagree with that in a way, um, because really in the way I look at the conventions is not necessarily a speech. It's more of a one sided interview. Um,
recruitment.
yeah, well, it's the way I look at it is it's a one sided interview. So before the conventions, and that's really kind of what a convention was set up to be a long time ago when they first started to happen was let's get all the people who are either supportive of this person, or is this running person and their running mate, or whatnot, campaign staffers, etc., put them together so that they can answer questions, share their opinions, etc. And that's kind of, it's like a one-sided interview where, say me and you were, you're interviewing me, and you ask me a question about something, and I answer it. It's basically, you go in with all the questions already asked, and you're just kind of answering what people want to hear, type of deal. That's the way I look at it. And I think if you struggle with a interview one-on-one with someone, yes, it might be, live on TV, but so was the convention, right? Live on YouTube, live on pretty much any social media platform you click on, you search it, it's there, live on multiple different, platforms, Fox News, CNN, NBC, you name it, it was live. So if you're struggling with a one-on-one interview with, a news anchor, what's it going to be like when you're getting interviewed in the press room of the White House with 30, 40, even more, press members there asking you questions, and that's live on TV, and you freeze up and you seem nervous or held in, or whatever you want to call it. What's that going to be like? Because it's essentially the same thing, only in the White House. Now you have 100 times more stress on you.
Well, see, Kamala's in the good position. He's the VP. But that's why they have the press secretary. That's why,
Yeah, but I mean, in the end of the day, it's still going to be.
Yeah. Well, you see, back in the day, in the early days of the conventions, it was an actual convention. It was, all right, the delegates from the states go, and you guys select the nominee. 60 with John F. Kennedy. There were 3 people on the ticket: Estes Kefauver, Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy, and a lot of power brokers were there. So back in the day, conventions were a legit thing. They were a legit, okay, let's see what happens. Now it's basically just a glorified party to say, hey, this is our guy, vote for him.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like everything over time, it changes, right? And it's a convention today is nothing what it was even 10 years ago.
No, not even.
And I think, in my personal opinion, that hurts it. Looking back even into the Clinton years, conventions back then, even though they didn't have the best people in it, but conventions back then,
they were fun.
Yeah, they were. You kind of tuned in for the excitement and the jokes and stuff, and now it's all like I said, Democrat, monotone, kind of just there.
I remember I was 7 at the convention when Obama, at his acceptance speech, and that whole thing was, that whole convention was basically talking about the achievements of civil rights. And when Obama came out, he spoke and had people laughing and had people, it was just a very high energy. And I think you saw that in 2012 and with Obama again and Mitt Romney, he was higher energy.
Well, and that's why, I mean, going back to the Obama years, I'm not a huge fan of Obama. I wasn't really on his side, but listening to his, just his press conferences in general, but his, all of his big conventions that he held, both, political and non-political, there was always jokes in it. There was always laughter. Yeah, I mean, granted, some of it was like, okay, I'm going to throw this out here, like any political party member. I'm going to throw this out here. I can't promise it. It's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to throw it out there as optimism to kind of lighten the mood, type of deal.
Yeah.
But even then, it was jokes. Like, I actually saw a clip today. I was scrolling through, and it was some of Obama's best jokes and some of his stingers that he said. And there was some about, the dad jokes that he said when he was pardoning the last turkey that he ever did. And moving on into Christmas where he basically carried that joke into, lighting the Christmas tree and stuff. And that was something you saw, and I think that was special to him because we didn't see it before, right? We didn't see it before Obama. We certainly don't see it now. And I personally can't remember the last president that had his enthusiasm for joke telling or just kind of sending some pokes at someone. I mean, unless you
Oh,
can think of one, I really can't.
no, not in our lifetime. I mean, George George W. Bush tried, but he wasn't. His jokes were more funny to him.
Well, and
Um,
I think that's what a lot of people think. I mean, it's
and
no different than an average Joe on the side of the street.
yeah, that's
They're gonna
basically
think their
what
stuff is hilarious, even though it's like, hey, why'd the chicken cross the road? Oh, because it, didn't like the grass on that side. It,
yeah, that's basically what George W. Bush was. Bill Clinton really wasn't. I mean, he was energy. He had some energy, but he didn't have the jokes. George H.W. was very monotone. The last one, was Reagan. I mean, when
yeah,
you talk,
I mean,
you go back to it. He was funny guy. Like he
it,
was just
and if you go back to that time, anyways, I mean, it was definitely a different society than it is today, and I think that the society back then definitely allowed for a little bit more joke telling and kind of enthusiasm in whether it be a speech or a press release or whatever. And I think even Obama, if he got in, the whatever setting, whether it be the press room at the White House or the front lawn, whatever, and told a joke, I don't think it would go over the same as it did 4 years ago when he was in office. I don't think it would. And that's ultimately the how fast things change. I mean, it's been 4 years, just shy of 4 years that Obama's been out of office, and I think if he told one of the jokes that he told between 4 and 8 years ago, today, it wouldn't go over the same. I
we
think
have
I think it would be almost detrimental to him if it happened and if he said something like that in the presidential office. Right now, as a civilian, he could probably say whatever he wants and no one would really care. But if he was in the same capacity as he was 4 years ago, no, it would be a completely different story.
and the problem with that is we are living in such a cancel culture.
We really are.
And it's not just one side, it's both. I mean, there's a Goodyear said that they wouldn't let, their people wear MAGA hats or Biden hats. Well, Trump came out and started, saying that, oh, they shouldn't do that. No, Goodyear's making a decision to not let their people politics involved with their business. That's a smart thing. They have the right to do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be,
I
depending
mean,
on what I did, like I wouldn't be okay with, because you don't want to alienate customers. So
so
don't,
that's it. But that's a catch-22, right? It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
mm,
Because if you do it like they did, which I support them, I think along the same lines you do here that politics shouldn't affect the business, right? But
yeah,
if you limit that like they did, now you've pissed off your employees that make your business run, or at least some of them, right? Maybe not all of them, but some of them.
yep,
And now when those employees get pissed off, a strike happens, your business doesn't run. But you make all your customers happy, or the majority of them. You're never going to make everyone happy.
you can't. It's impossible.
But if you allow it, you're going to piss off the other side. But
And
then
the other,
again, if you allow it, people are going to say, "Oh, it's making me uncomfortable, whatever." But if you don't allow it, people are going to say, "Well, there's my First Amendment gone."
yeah, that's the
So
problem.
it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it's I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but it's whatever mixture. I don't know Goodyear statistics, whatnot. I'm not going to get into it, but say it's 60-40. You piss off 60%. Now you're in the negative production, or if you piss off 40%, you're still in the positive production, but you're losing 40% of your business, whether it be your workers aren't working or the people that were shopping there are no longer shopping there because of it. So it's like we have to pick which one's better and which one's worse and go with the better one.
The devil you know
Ulti-
or the devil you don't.
Ultimately, you can't make that decision up front. Only time's going to tell with that, right? I mean,
See
things,
the
like I
problem.
said, things change overnight. I mean, we just talked about Obama 4 years ago, and some of the stuff that he said back then wouldn't fly today, even jokingly. And it's the same way now overnight. I mean, one thing, one decision today could affect something completely different tomorrow and be completely different than it was today.
I think that's the know, Goodyear. That's their business. That's good. That's their prerogative. It's their business. They have the right to say, don't wear X, Y, Z. At the same time, if people are gonna go into a business, go into that biz. If you're gonna go say buy a Goodyear tire, well, you see a guy wearing a Trump hat, and you're like, oh, I'm offended by that. Guess what? Who gives a rip? You're
Yeah.
going there to buy a tire. Buy a tire, get out. It's
And
not. It's not a. And I hate the. And I don't hate because hatred's a strong word, but I do not like the people that. Oh, you make me uncomfortable because you support Trump. No, that's their ability and their right to support in them.
and
I don't
and I'm
support
going to
them. I
tie
don't.
this in with the Ford vehicle debate that happened probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, where they decided that again, this was something 24 hours completely different story later, but they decided they are no longer going to make their police line of cars, so the Ford Explorer, um, the Expedition, stuff like that. I mean, they're really only making 3 cars now that are police related, and they made that decision one day. Overnight, their stock dropped. Their orders that were already in got canceled. Their, again, this was a 60-40 thing. 60% of their company said, nope, we're not working for you. Here's my resignation because of it. All because of the debate over, blue lives and the thin blue line and Black Lives Matter and all that, which I won't get into. That's a completely different topic from what we're talking about today. But that was something that they lost 60%, if not more, because of that. And overnight, they reversed that and said, nope, we made a mistake. Here you go. And miraculously, their orders came back in. Their stock went up. Their workers said, okay, we're happy. It's the same type of deal, right? And it's no different than Goodyear saying, okay, you can't wear any political campaign memorabilia, whether it be Make America Great Again hats or Biden t-shirts, whatever. You can't do that. And that's one of those where I think so far they've only lost that 40%. They haven't lost the 60 yet. And they're still kind of in the plus zone, I guess you would call it. I guess 55%, 45 to 55% would be the iffy zone. So they're still kind of there, but it's you're cringing on that line of people who are going to say, well, First Amendment, or you're making me uncomfortable. And like you said, if I walk in and I see someone with a Biden hat or a Hillary shirt or whatever, I'm there, like you said, I'm there to buy a tire. It's no different.
It doesn't affect me either way. I
No,
mean,
I
that's
mean,
your.
in the end of the day, you have the right to a vote, right? And that's what the election's for, is to vote. And I mean, I don't have an issue. I mean, my opinion might be different than everyone else's, and that's my prerogative, and I have the right to my own opinion. But personally, don't get butthurt about something, and I think that ties into both parties as well. I think each side is getting a little butthurt over other things that the other side's saying, or people not even linked to the other side, maybe just, you know, powerful people, whether it be news or actors or celebrities, whatever, that are just in favor of one side, maybe not tied with the campaign or whatnot, but just say are voting for Republican or voting for Democrat and say something. And these people are now like, oh, I'm butthurt because he said that, and they're not even involved with the campaign or anything like that.
Yeah. doesn't, like, in 16, I didn't support Trump. I didn't support Hillary. One of my favorite artists, JayZ, and JayZ and his wife Beyonce, they did a rally for Hillary Clinton. Okay, that's not going to stop me from listening to his music. Like,
Exactly. I mean, it's like Kanye West now, right? He said he was going to run for president. He didn't meet the deadline of certain things to get on the ballot. I think he's on the ballot of 5 or 6 states with a couple more pending if he can, get through things. But he's going to appear on at least 5 or 6 ballots of different states. I don't have the states off the top of my head, but he's going to appear. He has openly supported Trump in the past, and up until this day he still has, even though he's running. And he hasn't, when he's been asked about it, he hasn't come out and said, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing." But he's hinted to the fact that my name's just in there to take, votes away from Biden and the Democratic Party. And whatever, that's another topic that we can get into. But he's one of those where he's an influential person. A lot of people know him. A lot of people like him. A lot of people know he's supported Trump in the past.
Also, a lot of people know he's crazy he's batshit crazy.
But I mean, I can't even count how many records he sold. Like, I don't have enough. I can't count that high.
Yeah.
And he's that influential that if in the end of the day he's gonna, here's how I see this playing out. He's gonna pull out of the race at last minute, and he's gonna support, I'm guessing, Trump. I could be wrong. He could make a complete 360 and say, no, I'm supporting Biden. But he's probably going to support Trump just based off his record. And because of that, last time I checked, he was polling just over 2%. It was like 2.1 or 2.2% he was polling at, which in today's numbers is shit. But those 2% could be a couple million people. And now that he's turned around and say, "Hey, I'm supporting this person," that person just got 2 more million or 3 more or however many, I don't know, votes because that influential person said, "Oh, I'm supporting him."
In a country of 330 plus million, percent's a big amount.
Yeah. I mean,
especially when there's not going to be 330 million voters.
No, I mean, I don't even know what the number is or the number of people registered to vote. And even out of, say there's 330 million, say 275 million of them actually registered to vote. Only about 200 million of them are actually going to vote. So that's another, 130 million people that are just not voting. And that's another thing. I mean, if you're listening and you haven't registered to vote, there's still time. And do it. Because ultimately, the next 4 years, at least presidential-wise, is up to you. And it's going to affect you. I mean, we're all a part of this country no matter where you live. At least in the United States. And if you're not in the United States, register to vote wherever you are if you can. Because things are going to affect you. And, in the United States, president is 4 years. Other terms are 2 years. Even on the local level. We're getting to a local election here soon.
Much everywhere.
Yeah, and I know at least in our county, the county clerk office is up for grabs. One person is running, but they have already said, I have taken a job elsewhere, so they can't, it's too late to pull their name off the ballot, but they're going to be, picking someone else, whatnot. But even then, that person is still a 4-year position. So that comes down to pistol permits and, how your taxes are filed and a bunch of other stuff, record keeping and birth certificates and death certificates and everything. So even if you don't vote for the presidential election, which I encourage you to do, at least vote for your local election, because that's going to affect the way laws are. It's going to affect the way you get a copy of your birth certificate, pistol license, whatever. So do it. It doesn't hurt. It takes 5 minutes. And now, I mean, with mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, and you go to a polling place, it's all electronic in most places now, and where it is, and you literally have to click 3 buttons. So
Yeah.
it takes 5 minutes, and it's gonna affect you directly.
It's definitely very important that you do vote, regardless of who you vote for. Um, it's part of being an American citizen. I believe I'm one of the few people that believe that it's an obligation as part of this free country, part of know what we have that you need to vote. I mean, it's
I mean,
small.
we were all given the right to vote, and the way I look at it is, if you don't take it, it's like turning up a free ham sandwich, right? I mean, if you're given the right to a free ham sandwich, you're hungry, and you don't take it, well, that's on you. If you want change, you're given the option to vote, you don't vote, it's kind of on you for not voting.
You really don't have a right to say anything.
And that's the way I look at it. A lot of, I'm not going to say a lot, I'm going to say 30% of the people who are outspoken enough to go on, use their Twitter feeds, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and be outspoken about something or use the press. I would say 30% of them, and I could be wrong, but just my guess, and I'm sure Alex has a number too. I would say at least 30% of them have not voted or didn't vote for the certain election that they are referring to that they want change. And I'm going to say probably that same 30% of people won't vote again. And trying to push for that change in the future. And at that point, I'm not going to, I'll listen to anyone's idea, anyone's opinion. I'll be the first one to sit there and talk to you about your opinion and talk to me about my opinion. But if you're an advocate for change, or you're an advocate for something else and you don't vote, or you don't make that public, etc., I'm not going to sit there and listen. It's because you're not. It's like putting. It's like trying to put a sentence together and then forgetting the period at the end, right?
Basically.
So. And I think that transitions too into the campaigns. A lot of them, and I'm going to speak more on this is the Republican in me coming out, but there is things on the Democratic or on the Republican side as well. But I think the Democrats, especially Biden more, has said things that are confusing, are, I guess, interesting in a way would be a word.
That'd be a word.
And just different, that he's either made promises to that he's going to fix or he's going to do in the future or whatnot, or he's going to do this, and this, or he's going to enact this, and this, whatever. But he hasn't shown any forward progress with it. He hasn't shown how he's going to do it. He hasn't said how he's going to do it. He's just said, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And it's the same way as what I said. He's given the opportunity to take a ham sandwich, meaning he's given the Democratic nomination to run for president. He wants change. That ham sandwich is change. But he's not reaching for it. At least in my opinion. I don't think he's reaching for that change. He's saying that he wants to reach for it, but I don't think he is.
I mean, at this point, there's not a lot you can do. When you come, this is basically the advertisement for, I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard thing to explain. Campaigns are a lot of.
They're extremely hard to explain. They really are.
The best way I can explain a campaign is it's using your example of a ham sandwich, except I'm going to change it up. It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But you're eating it for peanut butter and jelly. Well, campaign's basically just full of bread with very little peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, it's like the ever get like a peanut butter. You know what? I'll just change it to Oreo. Ever get an Oreo cookie, right? And you always
Yep.
get that one Oreo cookie that has like hardly any filling in it, like no cream in it, and you feel like you get gypped. That's what a campaign is. It's
Yeah,
the
basically.
it's the Oreo cookie. You're so excited for the filling, and then you open it up, and that filling is like nothing on there. It's like a minor dusting. That filling is what's being said at the campaign. What's they're promising to do, I guess, and what they're saying they're gonna do. It's no different than a bad Oreo cookie that's 30 years old. In this case, it's 80 years old and falling apart on both
Like Trump
sides.
said, yeah. And Trump said in 16, drain the swamp. Well, look at the people he's got in there now. They're part of the swamp. Like they were part of it before he said drain it.
Yeah,
So there really hasn't been any draining of the swamp.
I think though that part of not a lot of draining of the swamp is he has tried in certain aspects to drain the swamp, like 100%, and I think everyone can agree on that. There's certain topics where he has tried to drain the swamp, in quotations. But I also think that a lot of those times, I mean, obviously he's made a couple tunnels here and there, and it's starting to, mildly trickle out and start to flow out, and it's gone down maybe 2 feet out of a 10-foot swamp. But I think the other times where he's tried to dig some tunnels out, that the Democrats, and I'm not even gonna just label it just the Democrats, the non-Republican, non-Democrat, the kind of just middle people that are just sitting there,
Bureaucrats.
yeah, because they can type of deal.
Yeah.
Um, that they don't pick a side. They just like making fun of both sides and slowing them both up so they could say, haha, we told you so, and win either way. Um, they've kind of just, I think, built some dams where he's dug a tunnel and they've built a dam and stopped him. And that's happened a couple times. He has missed the ball on certain things as well. But I think the Obama side did as well. Looking back, in Obama's 8 years, he dug some channels out and drained the swamp, 2 or 3 feet. But the Republicans also blocked him on some sides, and the middle folk who want to be right all the time blocked him on stuff. And I mean, that's politics in the end of the day. If it's something small, no one really cares. But if it's something major like healthcare or tax reform or police reform or whatever, that's huge, and that's a big dam. That's the Hoover Dam getting built around the White House.
Yeah. Politics.
And
I love it, and at the same time, it infuriates the hell out of me.
and
Look
you
at
know
this, and you basically can say, "Just get this done." Well, there's a lot of levers that you got to move to get one
it's
simple
it's
thing
like
done.
opening a floodgate or a lock system, right? You don't just push a button and everything magically does it. It's an hour of work that finally you can push that one button after flicking 10 levers and pulling this, wire and this and that. It's no different. I mean, we have the House of Representatives, we have the Senate, we have obviously the White House with the president. Right there's three different opinions. I mean, they could all be run by the Democrats, they could all be run by Republicans, they could all be run by hillbillies for all I care. But they're all going to have three separate opinions, right? I mean,
Yep.
the day that those three, I guess, houses, I mean, the White House is technically a house, so the day those three houses agree on something is the day I die. Because that'll never happen. I mean,
It hasn't happened since 64, and that was because of Kennedy's assassination.
yeah, I
They
mean,
were
look at the war on terrorism, right? Since since 9/11, there's obviously been some reforms and some policy, some foreign policy that's been passed, etc., and some military policy and protocols and such that have had to go through all three, the two houses, the House of Representatives, Congress, and the Senate, as well as get signed. But even then, I mean, something as big as national security can't even get agreed on that ultimately needs to be done. They still can't agree on it.
Yeah, and in the budget.
Yeah, the budget, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. And then the day, this is just going back to that pond analogy. One side starts to do something and the other side puts a dam on it. And, it's always like now we have a Republican president. The Democrats are building more dams than they can afford to build, right? But for 8 years ago when Obama was president on the Democrat side, Republicans were building more dams than they could have afford. So it's like, and it goes back to the whole situation with Ford and Goodyear. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Literally. If you don't, then what you don't want to get passed gets passed. If you do, you get heat for it and potentially risk losing the next election. So It's, again, that 60-40 thing. Do you piss off 60% and lose the election, but keep your true people happy? Your 40% that support you to the day they die happy? Or do you piss off the 40% that support you a lot, but you win the election because of a certain thing you did, but now you've pissed off your true supporters, your true donors that spend millions of dollars on your party? Again, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, so that's politics in a nutshell.
Pretty much, and it's going to lead till November, and we've already seen it since the, last week was the Republican convention, 2 weeks ago was the Democratic convention, and Monday, fists were already swinging in a sense between both sides, and as soon as the confetti hit the floor on the Republican convention, it was like two wrestlers just got the bell to start fighting, because and it's going to be round 1 to round 36 by the time November comes, and it's just going to be punch after punch after punch, and it's going to be no different than what it was, I would say 4 years ago, but not really, 8 years ago, with Obama, and I mean, I guess you could do the whole boxing match with Hillary and Trump, but down deep inside there, it was more of like two people playing Rock'em Sock'em robots. They weren't actually fighting each other. It was two robots fighting. But back to like the Mitt Romney days and the Obama days, that was some gruesome fighting that we saw, and we're going to see that again between, like I said, when the confetti hit the floor to November when we vote.
I think it was definitely worse in 16 than in 12. But you know what? Maybe that's just my age, and
yeah, I mean,
3 years is to go from 11 years old to 15, 16 when the next election was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of maturity. There's a lot of growing up. You got to.
I mean, if you look at the 16 election with Trump and Hillary, a lot of it was, yes, they were throwing punches at Hillary's emails, Trump being sexist, racist, whatever. But there was a lot of punches between those two, but you didn't see the parties really get involved. You didn't see like the whole Democratic Party. You didn't see like the whole Republican Party fighting, and that's where I said it was a bunch of robots, right? And it was a bunch of people just kind of, like I said, playing Rock'em Sock'em robots across the table. They weren't getting into it. Whereas you go to the Mitt Romney days and the Obama days, the whole parties were involved, and they are in this election. I mean, we've seen that from day one. They are fully involved in this election, both parties and every single person involved, even down to the celebrities that aren't even like remotely close to being a part of anything major. But this is going to be one of those gruesome fights till November 3rd. And when November 4th comes, it's either going to be one of two things. That fighting is going to continue because it's going to be the same situation we have now, where it's Trump in office and, everyone's trying to beat him up, or it's going to be reversed and we have Biden in office and everyone's trying to beat him up, only he is... I wouldn't call it fresh, because he's not fresh to the White House. I mean, he was there for 8 years with Obama, and that's brought some concern to people, where he's like, okay, you say you're going to fix all this stuff, but you didn't tell Obama how to fix it. So, and Obama's even said, I went to Biden before I made any decisions, and Biden apparently didn't do anything. But that's brought some concern, but that's a different topic, different story. But he's going to bring, I guess, in quotations, a fresh set of eyes. He's been out for 4 years. You, I guess, regain your eyesight. You lose the glaucoma and the baldingness for a little while. Those were old jokes on Biden. But I guess the fresh set of eyes would come in, and it might help him, it might not. Things have obviously changed in 4 years a lot. I mean, it's a completely different world today than it was yesterday, let alone 4 years ago. I mean, you can agree on that, Alex, and I think anyone can agree on that. But it's definitely, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a fight either way till November 3rd and even till January, when the next president's sworn in, or the continuing of President Trump. It's just a matter of how gruesome it's going to be, and how bloody the battle is going to be, and if any chairs are thrown, or tables are slammed on top of people. It's how much blood is going to get drawn between now and then, and at what cost.
Yeah,
because ultimately, no matter what side you're on, it's at the voters, the taxpayers, and the citizens' cost of anything that happens, whether it be good, bad, indifferent. It's ultimately at the voters' cost, and that's why we stress: go out, register to vote, and vote.
Yep. And I believe that that's a good point to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to wrap up today's mini episode, and we would love to hear from you guys about your opinions on not only the conventions, but the race. I mean, really, a presidential race starts 4 years. The day after the day after the new president-elect is found out, the next campaign starts. And we would love to hear your guys' opinions on anything up to this point, what you think is going to happen in the future, etc. And feel free to, shoot us a message on Twitter, Instagram, tweet at us, whatnot. But I think that's going to, conclude today's mini episode of the Unfiltered Podcast. Thank you for stopping out, tuning in. As always, I have been your host, Matthew Francis.
And I am your co-host, writer, and executive producer, Alex Pierce. Please make sure to follow the podcast, leave a review on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. It helps us out a lot.
It really does. And like I said, you can find me personally on Twitter and Instagram at MatthewF_media14. I will put that in the description of the podcast and all that, and on YouTube, etc.
And you can find me on Instagram at AlexPierce_unfiltered and at Twitter at AJPierce243.
Make sure to, like Alex said, leave a review for us. And you can also find us at MatthewFrancisMedia@gmail.com. Send us an email, whatnot. We always look at it. But that's going to conclude today's episode. We thank you for stopping out, and we will see you next week for a brand new full episode of the Unfiltered Podcast. Have a good one, everyone.